Will I still see the share screen or no?
We're connecting. Sten, we're live.
And many thanks to Larry, the Liberty Guy. Welcome back to In the Dugout. I am your host, Mike Stenhouse. Now, I think here you're going to see a few new things. We're trying new tricks here on In the Dugout with our video presentation. So bear with us. We're not sure that it's going to work. It's the first time we've tried some of these new deals. And we'll see if the sharing of screens and some of the video content we play, it's a visual show, so we like to give you a lot of images. But we're trying some new software, and as you can see, we have a whole new frame here around the show, and we'll see. So let us know if you like it in the comments below, and we'll hopefully not have too many snafus, but a lot of hard work by Larry, the Liberty Guy. Not just a Liberty Guy, he's a pretty good technician too, and he's learning this video production stuff very good. And we're going to talk about why that's important in just a little while, because of how YouTube canceled us last week. The show we had with Dr. Boston and Dr. Cretella was just too much for the far left to take. Again, we did a professional presentation of the facts, pushing back against this mass indiscriminate inoculation of everybody, and they didn't like that, so they took off the show. But we're going to tell you how we reacted. We're going to tell you how we adjusted, and we use that excuse to, as you can see, to give us a little new look here as well. So we're going to be changing a few things, a few ways we do things, and it'll look a little different, but I think it's going to make it a lot more professional in the end. All right, so after I get into that about the YouTube cancellation, first time we've been a victim of the cancel culture fully, we're going to talk, just some quick hits on just the way the media and the government are working together to keep spreading the pandemic porn, which is what a lot of people are calling it. Just spreading the fear, just without any thought, without any presentation of the facts of the other side. There's almost always two sides to a debate. And that's what you're going to get here, is the other side of the story that the mainstream media is not going to tell you about. I've got a lot to say and a lot of things in my batting practice session, where we just go through a lot of issues. So I'll probably take up close to the bottom of the hour. But then at the bottom of the hour, 4:25, 4:30 or so, depending on how liberal mouthed I get here. And I don't mean that philosophically, I mean liberally with my talking. We're going to have on Sue Cienki, Rhode Island GOP chairwoman, who really went after Dan McKee for pretty good reasons. I mean, he just made some very indiscriminate remarks, to use that word again, about Republicans and the former president, unbecoming of a governor, I think. And I think just further confirms that this guy is not the moderate we hoped he would be. I mean, we really wanted to have an open mind. But we'll talk about Sue Cienki. We'll get past that one scandal you've probably heard about with the fundraiser. We really want to talk more. Dan McKee's been in office for just over 2 months now. And let's do a little handicapping of that. We did invite, and I'll mention again later, we did invite the Democrat Party chair to come on the show as well, Joe McNamara, but he is a state rep. He's also a committee member, a committee chairman, I should say, I think, of the House Panel on Education and whatever. So normally 4 o'clock on Tuesdays, obviously they're in session, and he was gracious in apologizing that he couldn't make it. And then after Chairwoman Cienki, we're going to have another special guest, Tara Lavasser, who's going to come on, and she's going to talk about, did you know that there's a worldwide freedom rally event in Rhode Island this Saturday, part of a worldwide international a day of freedom from all the oppressive COVID government mandates and the big-handed government. So we'll tell you about that, or she'll tell you about that at the end of our show. Okay, tomorrow's show, we've got 3 guests. I think it's the first time we've had 3 separate segments with guests on the show, so it's going to be tight. We normally like to do kind of long-form interviews. These will be medium form. First, we're going to have a pollster who's going to talk about, he did a poll that we commissioned, our center commissioned end of last year. He did a poll on the public's feeling about the TCI gas tax. As you may know, TCI gas tax, we've been warning about this for over a year, and finally last week legislation was put in the House and the Senate to officially put Rhode Island into this little socialist TCI gas tax compact. So I have the pollster on who will tell you about Rhode Islanders' views on the issue. We're also going to have on a vice president from the Woo Sox, the Worcester Red Sox. Today is their opening day. Last I looked about 20 minutes ago, they were losing 2-0 in the second inning. In their home opener, they're 2-4 on the season. But again, I think it's a sad day. We don't have Tucker Red Sox here, one of 30 only AAA franchises in America. And we couldn't even keep the privilege. It's a privilege to have a AAA team. It's good baseball. It's great family fun. It's good business. And but yet we lost the team to Massachusetts and Worcester. So a vice president from the team will be on tomorrow. Well, we'll see how their opening day went, which is their opening home game right now going on up in Worcester at Polar Park. Okay, and then the end of the show is going to be a very interesting segment tomorrow. Ken Block, you all know Ken Block, and his Watchdog Rhode Island group. And you might have seen the headline, I think it was in Sundays, Providence Journal, about just, you're going to be shocked when you hear this story. Just so unethical, so much a rip-off to taxpayers, but Warwick firefighters abusing the overtime laws they should be making at taxpayer expense. And wait till you hear how they're rigging it so they can get these bogus payments. So that'll be tomorrow. A TCI pollster, Worcester Red Sox vice president, and Ken Block on Warwick firefighter abuse. And it's probably happening in your town too, but he's just focused on Warwick. And then Thursday, of course, Dr. Andrew Boston will be on to talk about all things vaccine. And I'm sure we're going to have a big discussion with it very likely that 12 to 15-year-olds will now be authorized to get the vaccine. Is that a good idea? Is there more risk with the vaccine than there is with the COVID for young adolescents? We'll ask Dr. Boston and find out. All right, let's get into some batting practice, and I'll put my cap on. We'll go with just the standard old URI, but representing Rhode Island cap. Okay, first let me say happy belated birthing person day. Can you believe that's what they want you to, instead of saying happy Mother's Day, they want you to say happy birthing person. Do you know why? Do you know why? Because the left actually wants you to think that men can get pregnant and have babies. Biologically engineered one way or the other, but birthing person. Come on. Happy Mother's Day. Happy belated Mother's Day. We had a fabulous day at my mom's house. And if let's just say we're not following Joe Biden's advice. How's that? Okay. We had a wonderful day, and everybody was safe, and it's the way it should be. It's the way we need to live our lives again. Take your precautions. Do what you feel you need to do, but enjoy your family. Enjoy your friends. Take a trip. Don't live life afraid. Don't live life. Again, don't be reckless and indiscriminate, but don't be afraid. Okay, another quick hitter. There is a House bill that's being heard on Thursday. If you go to the Rhode Island General Assembly website, you can sign up to either testify or put your voice in, yay or nay. But there is a bill that we passed. We knew this was coming. They passed this horrid New York style anytime, anywhere abortion bill 2 years ago here in Rhode Island. Now they want you to start paying for abortions. Now they want taxpayers to pay for abortions via Medicaid. So anybody on Medicaid gets free abortions paid for by you and me. And they want abortions to be covered in all health insurance programs offered to state workers. So there's two ways you could pay for abortions. And, there's a lot of other issues, not just the issue of abortions, yes or no, or pro-choice or pro-life, but, is it going to be state funded? Is it going to be our children under the age of 18 or 16 going to be able to have abortions without parental consent? Parental consent's been a big issue when it comes to these vaccinations. Well, we know that's coming with abortions as well. As just more and more anything goes, government pays for everything mentality, there's going to be a lot of cultural fights around the abortion issue. It's not a settled issue yet. I'm not talking about Roe v. Wade. I'm just talking about some of these ancillary issues that come up around the issue. They call it the equality in abortion coverage. They think by giving it a good name, one of these soft names, these leftist names, that it's going to, and it probably works. They're probably good. The left is masters at language deceit. They're masters at manipulating language. Imagine that the Equality in Abortion Coverage Act means you get to pay for abortions even if you don't believe, for whatever reason, religious reasons, moral reasons, personal reasons, medical reasons. Even if you don't believe in abortions, you're forced to pay for it, and they call it the Equality in Abortion Coverage Act. I guess the theory is that less wealthy people on Medicaid can't afford their own abortionists, so we're going to pay for it through Medicaid. Okay, let's get into a topic of what happened last week. So we had a really good show last week with Dr. Andrew Boston, Dr. Michelle Cretella. Dr. Cretella, Dr. Boston, the Brown University credentialed epidemiologist on our show often. Dr. Cretella. She's been on a few times. She heads a National Pediatric Doctors Association. And we're just talking about whether or not it's smart for the state to be pushing vaccinations of younger high school, under 18 high schoolers without parental consent and without any apparent, and we say the word apparent because nobody will come on this show and discuss it with us, but without apparent and proper medical procedures. Informed consent. Do you understand the risks and the benefits involved? Have you consulted with your doctor to make sure this is a safe procedure for you? That we seem to have bypassed all that, and yet if you went to watch the video the next day, and I'm going to share a screen here and show you. Now this is a new trick. I've got to take one extra step here before sharing images with you. But if you went to watch the video on YouTube the next day, this is what you saw. This video has been removed for violating YouTube's terms of service. What those terms of service are, I have no idea. We have no idea. They don't tell you which specific terms were violated. They just, if they don't like your content, they're going to cancel you. Now, what I'd love to know, since we're kind of pushing back against some of the cities and some of the statewide, just this indiscriminate vaccination, get shots in the arms to everybody. We were just pushing back with government data, government's own data. We were showing government's own data to say, maybe it's not like eating candy. It's something that ought to be thought about. Parents ought to think about. You ought to do it in consultation with your doctor. You ought to do it with permission from your parents. Not just running around sticking needles in people's arms. I mean, it's just not right. But YouTube can't stand that. The left can't stand that. The government can't. So I wonder if somebody in the government, because we know this works. We had somebody on, if you remember, after the election, when a Senate candidate's Facebook post was taken down because the government called and said, "Listen, we don't like what this guy's saying. Take his post down." And Facebook took his post down. So this is part of the corruption. This is part of the corporate fascism, I call it. It's the government's hiding behind the fact, well, it's not us limiting your free speech. We're just calling on our corporate henchmen to limit your free speech. But hey, it's a private sector decision, even though we're happy they're doing it, even though we're asking them to do it sometimes. Is there really any difference? This is what corporate fascism is. And it's really, fascism is the perfect term, because fascism really is for totalitarian regimes who understand that the private sector can deliver goods and services better than the government sector can, better than a socialist economy can. But yet they want to still control, and they still want to have the insider crony corporations on their side. And in this case, they're using them to do their dirty work for them. And, we put out, we've since seen data that, you can argue, listen, the VAERS reporting system is inaccurate in that it's only reports, they're not validated cases, but still it is government data. They've been using this to measure flu incidents and now COVID shot incidents for a long, long time. And according to that data, okay, you can trust it or not, but according to that data, the CDC data, it shows that more people have died from the COVID vaccines in the 4 months since we started last December, 5 months now, than all vaccines combined over the last 20 years. Okay. It's still a rare incident, right? Still very rare that there's any incident at all. But it does bring up an obvious question. Where is there more risk? With the vaccine or the shot, if you want to call it that, or with contracting the virus, if you're a young and healthy person without any pre-existing condition. So, and since there have been a number of cases documented in Rhode Island, across the country, 20 and 100 people who've had severe reactions. I'm not going to show you those. I don't want to overly risk getting shut down again. But because you couldn't see that video from last week on YouTube, we record everything. So we're starting to experiment with and I'm going to share my screen here, Larry. And we're going to experiment with a new service. We're not all the way there yet. And you've probably heard of Rumble. So Rumble is apparently a video platform where they won't censor you, won't cancel you. And a lot of conservative groups are going there, not because Rumble's conservative, just that they're neutral. But look at that. I'm going to show you. We normally, on our shows, we get, on a good day, we might get 100 or 200 views, within the 4 or 5 days after a show. We've had some shows in the thousands. But when we reposted this to Rumble, and we put it on the Ocean State Current. In fact, you can go to oceanstatecurrent.com. You can see here, in addition to the 100 or so who watched it originally on YouTube, another 348 people watch it on Rumble. So very interesting, and we're looking into whether or not we can broadcast live on Rumble. We don't know how much YouTube will even keep our channel open. They're still allowing us to keep our channel up for now, but when will we be canceled more? I don't know. Okay, here's something that very quickly hitting a few more, and I'm going to share. I'm going to share my screen again. Here is good news from the state. That their new plan, not just throwing up indiscriminate clinics at high schools and at public events, they're actually going to try to get more vaccines pushed out through family doctors, pediatricians, family doctors, whatnot. That's the way it should be done, right? That way you have parental consent. That way you have doctors, consultation, all in one. That's the way pretty much any medical procedure should go. So we fully support the pushing of vaccines out to family doctors, pediatricians, and whatever else. So I think that's really good news, and we support that. But of course, the big news today, and I'm going to share my screen again here. Of course, the really big news today, which you all probably heard about, is that soon 12 to 15-year-olds are going to be authorized to have the vaccine. Now, what happened here? Just to explain, the FDA has authorized the CDC to consider giving emergency use authorization. That's the first hurdle. The CDC still has to grant the emergency use authorization along with any restrictions, guidelines, or anything like that, recommendations when individuals in this age group get the vaccine. So it's not fully cleared or approved yet for this 12 to 15 group, but it is expected. I think there's a meeting of the CDC tomorrow on Wednesday. Okay, but so that's a good. I mean, I don't know if that's good news, but that's going to create a whole nother dynamic of the pressure of having younger people who really are at no risk of that, of the disease. So again, a lot of screen shares today because I want you to see this, that I'm not just talking out of hand here. Let me bring this one up. A little extra work on my side. Okay, here we. A minute. Hold on. I messed that one up. I'll do it again. There we go. So this is this guy I've seen on all the cable channels, at least the ones I watch. Stanford epidemiologist. You've heard our epidemiologist Andrew Boston say the same thing. That it's not an automatic that you should have your under 18. I'm sure Dr. Boston would say even under age 30. That if you're no risk from the vaccine, I mean from the virus, and it's a kind of a toss-up. Maybe even more of a risk if you get the inoculation. So here's a doctor from Stanford saying the exact same thing, and you can see what he's saying right here. The balance, again, you got to weigh the pros and cons, and here he is saying the balance just may not work in his view, and again, it's up to each family to decide that balance, right? It's up to each family. And then Dr. Boston, down here below, writes, why would you vaccinate your child, for a disease that's really not going to cause any harm? So it's a good question. It's just a question. It's up to you. We're not telling you what to do, what not to do, but you should make informed. That's what informed consent is. I need to understand the pros and cons. Okay. So that's going to be a big debate. We're going to talk about that a lot Thursday with Dr. Boston. Okay, just a few other quick hits, and then we'll get to our guest, Sue Cienki. I want to show you just a few other. I'm going to share my screen again, Larry, and then I'm going to show you a quick video clip, and then we'll be ready to go. So, in addition to the 12 to 15-year-old, here's the pandemic porn. Here's just today the new variant, the new Indian variant. Now remember, there was the English variant, nothing. There was a South African variant, nothing. Now there's the Indian variant and in the same day with the first case, look, the first case, if that's not bad enough, they follow up a few hours later with one case in Rhode Island, it's a major threat to Rhode Island. This Nick Landikit guy, I mean, this guy is the master of pornographic pandemic fear. Everything this guy does, it's unbelievable. And then that fear has pretty much reached a threshold when you see what happened in Canada. You probably have all seen the video of that pastor of a church in Canada when Canadian health and police officials without a warrant, tried to walk in and tell him to shut down his service because they weren't properly distancing or masking. And you've probably seen the video where he let him have it. He called them Nazi, communist, socialist. Get out of here if you don't have a warrant. Get out of here. You want to be ashamed of yourself. I mean, if you haven't seen the video, look it up. Canadian pastor fights back. But finally, the Canadian authorities, and they did it twice. They went to his place twice. There were 2 sets of videos. And the Canadian tyrants got their revenge last week. So Larry, let's go ahead and play about a minute of that video.
Number,
You.
sorry, what's your name and number, please?
5283 Constable Darwood.
A Nazi, a lawbreaker. You're breaking the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. How can you look in your mirror, man?
So I have advised both you and Mr. Pulaski over there that you guys are both under arrest. Please.
I can't see the video, so Larry.
Sure, report. Yes. Open the door, man. Whoa, stop.
Get you to stay in the car. Stand back.
If you're not recording, it's backwards. Right one more. You're nuts. You can stop you.
Stan, we're back.
So, arrested for standing for religious freedom, arrested for berating government tyrants. I don't know if that's happened in America yet. It's happening right north of us in Canada. Is it that far away from happening here in America? This absolute fear-mongering, this religion of government knows best, this infringement on our personal, individual, religious, and economic rights, First Assembly rights, rights to free speech, free assembly. It's become a religious cult to the left, and we know that these cultish movements often end up into government action. And that's the sad state of our country and our state. And in our state, you can almost argue now that we've got a tyrant. I never would have thought I'd be saying this about Governor Dan McKee, but we might have a tyrant in Governor Dan McKee. So let's bring on our guest, Rhode Island Republican Party Chairwoman, Sue Cienki. Sue, welcome back to In the Dugout. If you would turn your video on, please.
You've disabled me.
Yeah, we'll have Larry fix that.
Okay, got it.
There you are. Okay. Welcome back, Sue. And I see you've got a cap on. What do you got for us today?
World Series 2019. So.
Wow.
Time.
All right. Can't say. Well, welcome back. Okay. So, wow. So this little fundraising event has caused quite a kerfluffle out there for a lot of reasons. For the governor, even for you and your party, and then we'll get into a larger talk about Governor McKee. Let me first say, as I mentioned at the top, that your counterpart, Chairman McNamara from the Democrat Party, I spoke to him yesterday, graciously declined. He's head of an education committee, a subcommittee in the House. They're in session, and he's got all kinds of duties. So he said maybe after the session's over, I'll be happy to come on and talk with Sue. So maybe we can get a good debate going at some point in the future. But he was gracious enough. It's not for just to informed consent thing. They're family friends of ours, the McNamara's, when our kids grew up together in Warwick. All right, so Sue Cienki, before we get into what happened with this fundraising thing, just and don't mention the fundraising thing right now, but just your view overall of Dan McKee's first 2 months in office. Is it what you expected?
Absolutely not. I was asked this question before to give him a grade on what he has done so far, and I gave him a C. I said he's approachable and he's a very affable gentleman.
He is.
But he's governing so far to the left. I mean, I think everybody's expectation were that for 6 years he was the lieutenant governor and he was going to be a huge cheerleader for small businesses. It is what he had built his office, the time in office as lieutenant governor, as a champion of small businesses. They could really use a champion right now, and he has all but turned his back on them. He signed that awful climate bill that will not do anything to affect the climate worldwide, and certainly not in Rhode Island enough to make a difference.
I mean, you don't think Little Rhodey can counteract everything that's going on in China?
No, and that's not to say that we don't take climate and our environment seriously, because I think we all do, and we all need to participate in making sure that, we're good stewards of the earth. But this bill, it just gives unelected bureaucrats the ability to make our environmental and economic policy. And it also gives every citizen the right to sue the government when we don't hit those parameters. And in 9 years, we have to have 45% reduction of our carbon emissions in the state, which means that over 100,000 people in this state that heat by oil shouldn't be allowed to heat by oil anymore. There are 150 oil companies, small oil companies in Rhode Island. So what you've basically done is saying, you gotta go out of business because you don't fit what we believe should happen. And they're relying on solar, which leads to deforestation, and you can't put solar everywhere on top of everybody's roof. You just can't. And they're relying on wind turbines off the coast of Rhode Island. We don't have enough capacity here, enough land to put the...
Well, I think to sum it up, I don't want to get too much into that, the specific issue, but there's a balance, right? Just like we talked before. What's the environmental benefit compared to the economic damage? But there never seems to be any consideration of the economic damage and
right.
All those. All right. So overall, you feel that McKee is not the moderate he was billed to be.
No, he has moved so far to the left, and I think he's doing it because he believes that in a Democratic primary, and there will be 3 opponents who are more progressive than he is. He believes that
Who are you thinking of? Gorbea, Magazina, and Alorza?
Yes, those 3. They've all indicated that they're jumping into the race, and I think he feels as if he moves so far to the left that he will get the progressives to vote for him. And I think that that's a bad strategy. I think his strategy should have been stay in his lane. And his lane would be to convince the moderates to come out and vote for him, and get them out to vote. Like if he believes that the moderates don't go out to vote, all he would have to do is point to those other 3 and say their policies, their economic policies, the way that they are going to govern is so far to the left, it's not going to help Rhode Island rise from number 50 all the time to even 49. But he's not doing that. And I just think that he will be...
So you think he's trying to appease progressive left-wing, even socialist voters with
yes.
support of these policies?
He thinks
well,
that
we also know that Joe Paolino has expressed interest. There's some question if he would run as a Democrat or an independent, but he's probably not a socialist, I wouldn't think or hope, but he could grab a lot of the middle vote. So, McKee might really get squeezed here. But I agree with you. I don't even think most Democrats are socialist progressives. I just think they're the loudest ones and the one the media like. All right, but I got to ask you this: we're on gubernatorial politics. What's the Republican strategy for the gubernatorial election next year?
So you'll see. It is certainly Republicans actually do well when there is a liberal left-leaning nominee from the Democratic Party. It is where we won races from Governor Almond to Link Chafee was a Republican to Governor Kucheri. It was always when we moved too far to the left. We had close to 200,000 people come out and vote for President Trump. That is more votes then Gina Raimondo won when she became governor of Rhode Island. So our theory
Yeah,
is
but you need a candidate. Who's the candidate going to be?
wait and see. They'll be about us. There'll be somebody. Yes, and I think that.
I mean, there's not even anyone rumored. Not only is nobody declared, but there's not even anybody rumored. Can you give us anything right now? Is there any?
Nope. I'm not going to give you. I'm not going to reveal my hand now, other than to say there'll be somebody that will be running. And
Well,
I think
we're 18 months out. How long can you wait?
Governor Kachuri actually didn't jump into the race until December before the race. I mean, people are
Yeah, we're in a different atmosphere now.
right, but people are pushing and they expect
All right.
somebody out, So
Well, you understand, the longer you wait, the more you're going to come under scrutiny and criticism for not having a candidate. But I know the candidates can only move on their own time. All right, let's move on to the McKee Jerry Zarella fundraiser now. Just quickly, I want to talk not so much about what happened, but the aftermath. So Jerry Zarella was the Trump co-chair in Rhode Island, and apparently he donated some money to McKee and offered to hold a fundraiser for McKee, and it was apparently initially approved, but when McKee found out it was from a Trump co-chair, he canceled the fundraiser and put out a statement that I'm going to share, Larry, right now, and I'll have you comment on, and then can even show your organization's response, Sue Cienki. So, first of all, I don't know why Governor Dan McKee is putting out a contact from somebody at MikeTrainerConsulting.com. I don't know why that's not coming from the governor's office. So that was strange. So basically, says McKee, I do not want to be associated with Donald Trump in any way, shape, or form. I do not like Trump. He is dishonest, divisive, and his big lie is a threat to our democracy. I don't know what that big lie is. He didn't say. There's no place for Trump spokesperson to co-host any event I'm involved in. That sounds a lot like a Hillary Clinton deplorable comment to me. Your thoughts?
Yeah, exactly. I think that this could have been handled differently. If I were Dan McKee, I'd look to see whether Mike Trainer is somebody that I want working with me on a campaign, because it was so tone deaf. I think it was completely unnecessary. If Dan McKee was getting heat from people on the left, and that includes maybe the Democratic Governors Association, which was saying, hey, listen, this gentleman who's holding a fundraiser for you was a Trump honorary chair. Probably not a good look for you when you're running against three other Democrats. I am sure if Dan McKee called up Jerry Zarella and said, listen, I'm getting a little bit too much heat. Is it okay? I'm gonna back away from this event. Jerry would have said, fine, it would have been over. This should have been a nothing burger. Like, this should not have risen to the level that it did. So this shows to me that there's a little bit of incompetence on his campaign, that they felt necessary to put out a statement like that.
I think it's bigger. I think it's bigger than that. And it's what we talked about earlier.
Right.
I think this just shows how extreme and possibly, I don't know, you talk about Trump derangement syndrome. Obviously, Dan McKee has Trump derangement syndrome.
Right.
It's a uncontrollable reaction to anything Trump. And, we see it with news personalities and other people in the state. So this is further evidence to me of how much further to the left Dan McKee is than what I anticipated. He can't even hold his tongue and act in a gubernatorial way on this. Now, you guys shot back. Now, Larry, I'm again going to share my screen here, but you guys shot back, and you guys didn't hold back and mince words either. You called him weak. You called him afraid of his party's left wing. You mentioned 200,000 deplorables who voted for Trump that he probably just alienated. And I think, if I remember, this media least only grabbed so much of it. Even went on to ask if he was really that
Joining
dumb.
me now is
some
Tara
people have
Lavasser.
called your party dumb for asking that question. I heard it on the radio right before the show. Your thoughts on your Republican Party response to McKee's statement?
Well, it is just another example of Dan McKee being weak and catering and pandering. He's a panderer in chief at this point. He's pandering to the left of his party. I think there are plenty of Democrats in this state that I would call Kennedy-esque Democrats who are socially conservative. They have a history and a legacy of their families being Democratic, and he's going to lose all of them. And quite frankly, he's the governor. He represents all of us. And he represents those people that were vocal Trump supporters. He's also got to realize that President Trump is no longer the person sitting in the Oval Office. Right now, Joe Biden is the president, and he should be more concerned about the policies that are coming out of that office than to be worried about somebody that was a Trump supporter that wants to run a fundraiser. I mean, you hear so much out of the National Democratic Party that we're the party of unity, we're going to unify the country. This did not unify that. And quite frankly, if anybody remembers, after the election and after the results were certified, Jerry came out, as the honorary Trump chairman and said, it's over. Joe Biden is our president. Let's move on. We lost the race. He actually broke from the president and said, Joe Biden is our president. Let's move forward. He didn't agree with the January 6th, having people come and rally down there. Jerry, so here was an opportunity for Joe Biden, for Dan McKee to come out and say, hey, listen, this guy is a reasonable individual. He didn't agree with Trump all the time. He likes his policies and procedures, but he feels as if Joe Biden is the president. It's somebody I can work with and reach across the aisle and do that. But he didn't. He insulted him. He took his money, and then, now Jerry wants it back. So
why do you think that's dumb?
Why do I think that's dumb? I think that he didn't even have to come out with that statement. He could have canceled the event and said, and walked away from it and said, it's just not a good optic.
You're saying it was dumb to potentially alienate 200,000 Trump voters.
Yeah, it was just unnecessarily poking the bear. And now you have quite a few other vocal Trump supporters who now it's their mission to make sure that the Republican candidate that we put forth is supported by all of them, and not Dan McKee.
So I'm gonna disagree with not with you, with the media. One thing that I compare Republicans when they're in the minority nationally, or Democrats. Let's think of Democrats when they're in the minority nationally. Of course, that never happens here in Rhode Island. And when you're in the minority, your job is to be the opposition party.
Right.
Too often over the years, I've seen too many Republicans bite their tongues, not tell it the way it is, because they don't want to piss off the powers that be and maybe lose their chance to get a little crumb here or there. Well, crumbs aren't good enough in my book. Crumbs aren't going to turn the tide in this state. So calling them out, you are a partisan. We can't do that, but you are a partisan. We can talk about bad policies,
Right.
but you can attack people. And I think that's your job as an opposition party. How do you see your role as party chair? Are you here to try to get some crumb legislation for your elected officials, or are you here to call out the ruling class's abuses?
Yeah, and quite frankly, I have to agree with you, Mike. There are a lot of politicians that just worry about getting reelected.
Yep.
And that what made Donald Trump so appealing to people is he came in and he didn't care. He said, and he may have been inarticulate at times, he may have been offensive to people at times, but he said, this is what I'm going to do, and this is why I'm going to do it. And he went about and did it. There are so many, and that's what the American people wanted, somebody that was going to disrupt the status quo. We've got lots of politicians here in Rhode Island that just worry about getting reelected instead of doing the job that they were elected to do. They're worried about, well, if I do this, if I push back against this special interest, I'll never get reelected. Well, why do I want you to get reelected if you're not doing the job that you were elected to do?
If you're not going to defend, the Republican Party right now is a party, it's come down to this, who's defending liberties and freedoms and constitutional rights. and it's a Democrat Party that's trampling all over those, thinking that you're better off with fewer rights and more government control over your life. And if we don't start talking in those terms, we were called crazy for talking about that 4 or 5 years ago, socialist. Well, now it's obvious, right? That's what's happening with AOC and everything else that's going on in Biden and McKee, unfortunately. That's what's going on. All right, we only have a few minutes left. I'm going to spend the last few minutes, I think, on one topic, talking about the 2020 census. Now, it was widely believed that Rhode Island would, our stagnant growth over the last 20 years, which is continuing, and which only went up slightly, would probably lead to a loss of a U.S. House seat in the Congress. But we barely hung on. You have some additional information that was not widely held. What do you know about that?
So when you look at the members of the Congress, there are 435 members. And when they do the census...
In the House.
The Senate, I'm sorry, in the House. So what they do is they get the census data and they rank them in accordance. After the 2010 census, and I actually happened to work the 2010 census, so I know a lot about how policies and procedures are done. Our second congressional seat was ranked at 419. There was a wide thought that we were going to lose it because, we were going to lose 14,000 residents and that seat was going to be gone. You have to look at how well other states count the people, and so it's a balancing act. But
all right, now before you jump, I also want to add in that in the November or December when some early estimates came out, it wasn't looking too good for Rhode Island at that point, right?
Right, it wasn't looking too good. And actually, one thing that people don't understand is we actually had a trial run. They spent money in Rhode Island in 2018 to actually go out and do like a pre-census to see where we were. And all indications were it wasn't good. So all those numbers were coming back saying it wasn't good. But in the end, what happened is our second seat went from 419 to 428. So
out
we
of the
dropped.
430. But there were only 7 other U.S. House districts that ended up being closer to losing a seat than we did.
Right. And a lot of that has to do with how they counted, when they started the census, what they did. Now, we know what we did here in Rhode Island. They paid people. They spent $20 paying people that they couldn't find or didn't have addresses for to fill out census forms. And they got 40,000 people to fill those forms out.
All right, hold on. So it's one thing to go out and find, because, the law, Trump tried to change it, but the law did say you can count undocumented illegal immigrants. So do you think they just went out to try to find every illegal immigrant, or are you actually claiming here that they did some kind of census fraud?
No, I'm claiming that they actually went out and looked for people to make sure that they were counted. I don't know who they were. I don't know.
Did you just say people that didn't exist, or no? Did I?
No, not people that didn't exist. They actually existed, but they paid them to fill out the census forms. I am sure that in the illegal immigrants,
with taxpayer money,
with money that was used for the census. So that's a lot.
You have documentation of that? How do you know that?
So, John Marion will tell you that. John Marion from Common Cause will say that they went out and they paid people. And it's been documented all over the place that they were giving people $20
We're talking about undocumented immigrants here, right?
I have no idea who they paid.
Probably, because we know that undocumented immigrants are supposedly leery to fill out a census lest they be identified and deported or something like that. So,
right. And I am sure that if they did get some of those individuals to fill out a form, for every one they got to fill out, 2 probably did not. I am not.
All right, so we know they made an effort.
Yeah.
We know that, it was in the news. The governor put a commission together to improve our census chances. Your first time I'm hearing people have been paid for that, and you're saying that John Marion can validate that.
Yep.
All right, I want to follow up on that with him, but I want to now focus the last minute or two here between the December estimate, not just Rhode Island, a lot of states. It looked like blue states were going to lose a lot more than the 3 or 4 seats they lost, and that states like Texas and Florida would gain a lot more than the one or two they gained each. As Secretary of Commerce was in charge of the census, a lot of people were surprised at the massive difference, historically massive difference, between the December estimates and the March final results.
So I know Lawrence.
And if Gina Raimondo was working so hard to make sure that votes got counted in Rhode Island, do you think she might have worked hard to make sure certain votes came out a certain way in other states as well?
There has been an effort by the RNC Legal and some of the Republican representatives in Congress. They have sent letters to Gina Raimondo demanding a lot of different parameters for how these numbers.
Freedom of information requests?
Yes, they've asked for a lot of things. So what would be interesting is to see if the numbers, how different they were under Wilbur Ross, and what went wrong. Why are they so wildly different? We thought Texas was going to gain 3 seats; they gained 2. So there were just some things that were surprising. I'm happy we kept a seat here in Rhode Island. I don't think people understand the devastating impact that would have. Federal funds flow to us. We're insignificant as it is because we only have 4 congressional electoral
We're all reliable Democrat seats right now, unless you
and they are. So
got your game going here.
Yeah, so truly, it was a good strategy to get the census count, get those numbers up, because you're right. We know the 4 seats are Democratic. Why would you want to lose them when Nancy Pelosi only has the majority by 5 seats?
All right, so you let us know if you're hearing anything through the GOP pipeline about any follow-up response or legal action to what you said is the National Republican Party's inquiry request.
Not that I expect it's going to impact us in one way or another. We're just so insignificant to them, but it may have an impact on some other states.
All right, Sue Cienki, Chairwoman, Rhode Island Republican Party, thanks for being with us. Thanks for your thoughts. And we'll have you back on soon. Thank you, Sue.
Great, thanks.
Okay. Always interesting, the partisan politics. We, again, we invited her counterpart to come on, and he agreed he'd come on at another point, and we hope that Chairman McNamara will come on. All right, our final segment. We're gonna introduce a guest shortly, Tara Levasseur. But did you know that this coming Saturday, May 15th, that there's going to be a Rhode Island chapter or version or gathering of a worldwide demonstration, and that there already was a similar demonstration on March 20th, a few months ago. And apparently more than 40 countries around the world, and I think in many, many states, we'll learn more here in just a minute from our guest, are going to be participating. And it's they're calling it a march or a rally for freedom, for peace and human rights. And it's not your typical left-wing human rights stuff. It's the fundamental rights that we were guaranteed, at least in America, in our Constitution, the fundamental rights that every human being in the world is guaranteed. And the rally is for freedom against these oppressive, in America's case, often unconstitutional, but either way, oppressive coronavirus restrictive mandates. So just a little while ago, we had a chance to talk to one of the organizers of the Worldwide Rally for Freedom 2.0. Joining me now is Tara Levasseur. Now, Tara has multiple duties. You're a member of the Rise Up Rhode Island Parents Group, who we've interviewed a few times on this show, but for today's purposes, you're also part of the rally we just described that's happening this Saturday at Rocky Point. And as you talk, we'll put up the poster of the event. But the Worldwide Rally for Freedom sounds intriguing. Is it really worldwide?
It definitely is worldwide. England is joining us. So I have friends from England that did the first one in March, and they're doing it again. Italy's doing it. Argentina's doing it. On Telegram, you can see all of the countries doing it. But the U.S. this time in May is finally standing up, and almost all of the states in the U.S. are doing this rally with us on May 15th.
So you're saying there's going to be dozens and dozens of states doing similar events to what you're doing this Saturday at Rocky Point?
Absolutely. New York, Chicago, Pennsylvania. There's
Okay.
dozens of them.
And you're asking people to attend physically, this is not a web event, right? You're asking people to attend. Okay. Right.
Yes, I'm attend physically. It's a peaceful movement, but it's a physical movement. It's not a Zoom movement. It is a peaceful, physical movement in the park.
All right. So, if I read through the media release, I'm looking, you talk about the group, the international group talks about the ubiquitous public incarceration. I'm sure they're referring to the lockdowns there. You're calling for an end to all state of emergency declarations with regard to COVID. And I mention that because this is really about freedom from the COVID restrictions. Is that a better way is that a more accurate way? Are we talking more about freedom generally?
So in Europe, there's more lockdowns than there are in the US. So to pertain to Rhode Island and the US, we're talking more about your freedom of mask mandates, jab mandates, and our censorship, and our indoctrination of our schools. So our freedoms are more for freedom of speech, freedom of movement, choice, assembly, and health.
Now, you were not, you were politically aware, you were a vigilant citizen, but it wasn't until you saw the big heavy hand of government get involved in our lives with COVID that you and many other, I would assume, of this rally's organizers decided to stand up and do something to say enough is enough, Big Brother.
Absolutely. I was just a rule-abiding citizen and doing my day-to-day voting active citizen until it affected everything in my life, between being a dental hygienist and a mother, and even my right to decide if I wanted a vaccine or a mask or just to travel. It affected every decision I had, and I felt like I was being controlled in a submissive tyranny of a state.
In a totalitarian manner. Well, that's exactly what the left wants to happen. They want to do it, of course, in a very nuanced way without you realizing you're being controlled and manipulated the way you are. So what has this whole, so we're going to get back to the rally in a second, but what has this whole experience taught you about the big government agenda of the far left?
It has taught me that if we don't go back to our Constitution, and we don't fight like our forefathers wanted us to, and we don't stand up, because what our forefathers has taught us is that it comes from the bottom up, and that the government is supposed to be working for us, not the other way around. But if we, the people, don't stand up peacefully, if we just don't stand up and fight for our rights, no one's going to save us.
Wow. Very well said. We're going to quote you on that, Tara. All right, let's go back to the rally itself. It's this Saturday, May 15th, Rocky Point Park, which is now a nice big open field. I played a softball game down there recently. 1 to 4 p.m. So is there registration required? Is there a Facebook page people can go to find out more? First of all, just for general information, where would you direct people?
So there's a public Facebook event there that anyone can see. It's a very public Facebook event, or you can go on multiple Facebook pages as Rise Up, Rhode Island Freedom Fighters, Rhode Island Warriors for America. But this event is public. So if you just go on events, it will be there.
All right. Now you're one of the organizers of this event. Do you have so what is it? You're going to have, I assume, speakers there? Do you have a speakers list yet set up?
We do. So we have the national anthem's going to be sung. Then we have a rally anthem from Les Miserables. which
Oh, wow.
Claire is a opera singer, so we'll be playing it in the background, but she'll also be singing it.
That's Claire
We have,
Stelzner. Yep.
yes, we have Health Choice is going to be speaking, a member from Health Choice. We have a member from Rise Up is possibly speaking. And we have someone who's going to be doing a prayer. And then we also have an open mic, and Claire and I will also be speaking. But we also have an open mic for anyone else that wants to join. I have put out there for anyone else. We do have an itinerary. We also have, I have some stuff for the kids, flags and lays and, American flag, all
I know
American
you've
flag
purchased
stuff.
yard signs and things, and
I have.
I mean, do you have any idea? Are you expecting a good turnout, or what would constitute a good turnout in your mind?
I'm just expecting people that have had enough just to come out and join us. We've had rallies before. I know Laura's had rallies before, and we had rallies in Massachusetts, and a good 50 to 100 people have showed up. I'm hoping more will now that we've really gotten the word out, and I think people are just done. So
I think
I,
you're right. I think
I'm
you're
just
right.
hoping, I'm being optimistic that it's going to be a nice day and a lot of people are going to want to show up for this.
The Worldwide Rally for Freedom, parentheses, from COVID restrictions. The group is calling for an end to state of emergency declarations for people subjected to ubiquitous public incarceration. I like the way you term that. Your group termed that, and authoritarian coronavirus restrictions. We've been talking about that on this show for months. I wish you good luck at your rally, and
Thank
take
you.
some photos, and maybe we'll have you or Claire come back on and talk about how the rally went afterwards. Tara Lavasser, thank you very much for joining us on In the Dugout.
Thank you so much for having me, Mike.
Okay, good luck. God bless.
Thank you. You too.
When Anthony Fauci said, maybe by next Mother's Day we can go, by next Mother's Day, we can go maskless with indoor parties. These people don't have any clue. People are done. I mean, they're done with the restrictions. They're done not being able to live their life. And they're especially done with these moronic government officials who have no clue. Does anybody even listen other than the breathless media and the deranged Trump derangement syndrome and other deranged, people who just want to be led by the nose on the left? Is there anybody else actually listening to these people? I mean, Governor McKee's got to end the weekly thing in Rhode Island unless he's ready to announce an end to the state of emergency. People are done. Go to that rally. If you can, look them up on the Facebook page and tell the government to be done with this. Let us live our lives. Give us the information, but let us make the decisions for our lives, for our families, for our kids, for our businesses, for our educational system. Get the hell out of our lives. We're done with you. And it's not just the pandemic. The government is coming after every aspect of your life. We're going to keep highlighting it on this show. I hope you like the new look. Like your comment. I hope you like the ticker at the bottom. By the way, that ticker is headlines from our Rhode Island Center for Freedom and Prosperity's website. So all the headlines of all the recent posts we've put up, we'll see if we can get some more content in there in the future. We're working with a few partner organizations maybe on that. But we're going to keep improving our look and feel. You guys have proven to us that you want a voice like us that's not afraid to speak the truth, that's not afraid to challenge the status quo. Even if we get canceled by YouTube, we're going to find a way. We got canceled last week. We put it on Rumble. We may do everything on Rumble. Right now, we're not sure what their live capacity is yet. We know they're a great place to store our videos safely. But we want to reach you. We want to reach more of you. So please tell your friends, subscribe, tell your friends to listen in, tell your friends to watch live or on demand. You see the addresses there, rifreedom.org/live for all our live content, and rifreedom.org/dugout if you want to see our on-demand archive stuff. So we will see you tomorrow again. 3 guests, a TCI pollster, a vice president from the Worcester Red Sox, and Ken Block about Warwick firefighter overtime abuse. Our guest tomorrow. We'll see you next game. Mike Steno's out.